So he does usually 1 or 2 presentations with my group, and I have to. The big one? Yeah. Yes. I gotta. We use Microsoft's new offices in Vancouver, and they have a room that's seats about 100 people, but you can take down the middle divider and actually it becomes a big room, and you can put 200 people in there.
Our office isn't even close to that. 100 maybe if they were standing.
Well, but this thing was just opened last year in January. It's brand new, and it's a gorgeous office. Like, all the desks are all powered stand-up desks. Every desk has at least 2 monitors. Some have 4. My desk has like 2 monitors and an Xbox. Just, you know, got to try stuff out.
By the way, do you know Jeremy Foster? He's a VE down here.
No.
Well, he's going to do our November presentation.
And an Xbox. Just, you know, got to try stuff out.
I told him he was talking about his mind. Well,
no.
He's going to do our November.
Well, there's and an Xbox. Just, you know, got to try stuff out. The presentation I had when we agreed to do this is not the presentation. There's and an Xbox. It's just, you know, well. There's a whole lot of the new stuff. I just can't. The presentation I had when we agreed to do this 2 hours is not the presentation. There's an Xbox, but this is a good introduction. There's a whole lot of the new stuff. I just can't. The presentation I had when we agreed to do this. Do many people know? There's an Xbox, but this is a good introduction. There's a whole lot of the new stuff. I just can't. The presentation I had when we agreed to do this. Do many people know? There's an Xbox, but this is a good introduction. There's a whole lot of the new stuff. The presentation I had when we agreed to do this. See, for me, there's an Xbox. This is a good introduction. There's a whole lot of the new stuff. The presentation I had when we agreed to do this. They just played it for me. There's an Xbox. This is a free concert. There's a whole lot of the new stuff. They're making the road of all the fairs and stuff. They just played it for me. We haven't played for fair. This is a free concert. There's a whole lot of every night. They're making the road of all. This year they did. They just played it for me. We haven't brought it to fair. This is a free concert. There's a whole lot of every night. They're making the road of all. This year they did. They just played it for me. We haven't brought it to fair. This is a free concert. They had. There's a whole lot of every night. They're making the road of all. This year they did. They just played it for me. We haven't brought it to fair. They had. There's a whole lot of every night. They're making the road of all. This year they did. They just played it for me. We haven't brought it to fair. They had. There's a whole lot of every night. They're making the road of all. This year they did. Don't make stuff up. That's what the internet's for. It hasn't been playing at all. Oh, is that Windows 7? They're making the free. Don't make stuff up. That's what the internet's for. Oh. It hasn't been playing at all. Oh, is that Windows 7? They're making the free. Don't make stuff up. That's what the internet's for. Oh. There we go. It hasn't been playing at all. We're just getting one slide though. No, you're at Windows 7. They're making the free. Don't make stuff up. That's what the internet's for. There we go. It hasn't been playing.
James, I'm closing all your extra.
We're just getting one slide. Well, it was Chrome that was killing you. That app is such a resource hog. No, you're at Windows 7. They're making the free. Don't make stuff up. That's what the internet's for. There we go.
Show on monitor 4, I guess that would be.
I don't know.
It was. You had it up there. I did.
That's it. There you go. I'm gonna just sit down over here and chill.
Praise the Lord.
If he announces me and I don't get up, just sort of shake me or something. It's been a long drive.
I know, it's been a while. I just got back.
Well, I don't think it's on. That helps. You haven't got the mic on, do you?
Probably. Do you want the mic off? Yeah, I haven't touched it.
Yeah, I see it on the mixer.
So I should leave it on then? All right.
Definitely coming on the mixer.
What's that?
It's all being broadcast to the internet.
I know. Fortunately, I didn't say anything bad yet. I usually save that until I'm standing at the front. It's way more fun.
We get to mold little minds of flesh. Future developer right there.
Yeah.
Or her. I don't know. That's it. Probably better than the rest of us.
Wow, you guys have coders young here. I like it.
Yeah. Well, you know, the laws in the United States are so much better. Of course, I will put a caveat on our attendance. The smoke could affect it.
It's terrible. I didn't, you know, coming down, you see the smoke, but you didn't realize when you get out of the car and there's, it's not smoke, it's little bits of stuff.
Yeah, there's ash.
That's not healthy.
It's not good for us.
I heard that they put East Troutdale on notice, like whatever the levels are, they're on like the lowest one, which is like level 3 or something. It's not get out now or be prepared to get out
Well.
now, but it's
Yeah, level 1 is, you know, have stuff ready in case. Level 2 is don't go to sleep now. Level 3 is leave.
Yes. Good time for a trip to Hawaii. We just managed to clear the air up our way, but now your air is starting to leak up to us.
Yeah. Tomorrow it's supposed to reverse directions and blood in Idaho.
Oh, that's good.
Should be golden then.
I know people in Idaho. They won't even notice that it's smoke.
I was in the hospital staff back then. Okay, yeah, that's what they were doing.
The Thirsty Lion. It's good to have a pub as a sponsor. I like that. My group meets in downtown Vancouver. Businesses down there are all cheap.
Vancouver, Washington.
Nope, the other one. I drove down today. So left home at 9, got to the hotel at 5. That was a long drive. It's not supposed to take that long.
Is that because of smoke or?
No, it's just stupid Seattle traffic. Like Seattle to Olympia was just a parking lot. I think I averaged about 20 miles an hour.
I have to go there once a year for some work things, and every time I start to feel like the traffic here is too much, I just have that one trip to Seattle.
Oh.
And I'm like, nah, Portland's fine.
You should be able to get from Seattle to Portland in less than 3 hours. And it took 5. That's not good. To get to Seattle took 2.5 hours. That was great. No traffic, just blitz down. After that, not so much. You know, I used to get those notifications about the geek dinner. I always thought it was Greek dinner. I thought, why do they always eat Greek? Why don't they eat something else? Never mind. When you get so many emails, you don't tend to read them that closely. It's like, well, that's Portland. I'm not going to be there. I don't care.
Immigrate or you
No, I'm actually Canadian. I was born in Vancouver. Grew up there. Still live there.
realize, you mentioned that you were here for a while.
Well, the company I worked for was an American company where all the employees were in Vancouver. They bought the company in Portland and moved their head office to Portland. So I had to come down once a week, you know, to pay homage to the boss, provide alms, frankincense, myrrh, whatever. One week out of every month, you had to come down and do that, and then you go back home and do real work for 3 weeks. Am I going to have another microphone now?
That's kind of just to pick up the noise.
Okay. I hope my sound still works. It did work before. We switched. Yeah, like if I play sound on my computer, is it going to come through?
Should through HDMI.
Good. Perfect. We're good. Except it's HDMI to mini DisplayPort. I'm never quite sure.
I normally don't stay plugged in. I just do that as a health check. Because of the delay.
DisplayPort has sound.
And periodically, it's about
I don't know. It was working earlier, so I got to believe, right?
About the most advanced we get.
So since we've caught audio on the Elgato before. It's the Elgato game capture device.
Right.
We've caught the audio before on it, so I assume it'll.
I'm
The
just.
audio must be heading that way.
I just go with the assumption everything's going to be peachy keen, hunky dory. Everything's going to work great, and if it doesn't, we start trash talking Microsoft and everybody else. Apple, Android.
2 years ago, the same Jeremy Foster comes down. Projector will not start.
Yeah, somebody was telling me that.
Yeah.
And said that
Yeah.
a lot of hand waving going on.
It went really well. You couldn't have planned one to turn out that good.
Sometimes, if you got a good presenter,
He's a good presenter.
I
Living, right? So that helps.
I coach interns at Microsoft. It's one of the things I do. Well, I'm the technical advisor, but basically you coach them. And one of the things they don't know how to do, they're university interns, they don't know how to do presentations. And when the technology fails them, they're really screwed. I mean, they don't know. Because they usually stand up there and read the screen, right? And when the screen doesn't show anything,
Best thing, I don't know.
yeah.
Well, if you've ever, I'm sure you've probably had a chance in life to see Hanselman
I have.
reboot while he is continuing to talk.
Yeah, well,
And fix things, and it's just.
I'm not that good.
Never gonna be.
I may have to boot my computer. I suspect by now it's gone to sleep, but we'll deal with that.
Touching it. I don't know why this hasn't worked periodically for quite a while. So
That's okay. I'll just glance there because, again, the slides are all kind of new, so we're going to wing it.
single wing. I need liquid.
Yes, it's a good idea. Somebody's smart. He's got the big glass of water. Or whatever. Jamba Juice. That's what I was thinking, but I was thinking more in that vein, but he totally ruined the dream by saying it was Jamba Juice.
You were vicariously having a gin and tonic.
I was, yeah. Well, actually, I'm not a gin person, but and I don't think like a single malt Scotch that big would really go over that well. That might be a little overkill. I couldn't afford it if it was good stuff. So where the Thirsty Lion's down Cornell?
Yeah.
All right. I think my car air filter is going to have to be replaced after this trip.
This is our second or third bout.
We had a bunch of it come down from the interior BC a month ago, and it was really bad. But we didn't have the big particulate, which is more dangerous because the little stuff is actually more harmful than the big fluffy stuff. But it's still upsetting to see it. I'd rather just not know I'm dying and not see it, and you know. But it only lasted a few days, and we got a day of rain. We're supposed to get rain Friday, so that'll clear it out again. And you know, we are Vancouver. We get rain all the time. Actually, you guys get it more than we do. And you get the nasty icy roads that we don't get. I've been here when your roads freeze over. That's just crazy.
It never used to be like that.
No?
No, I mean, like 10 years I was here.
Well, this was 2008, I was last here on a regular basis. Come down other times, but 2008 I broke with the company and started my own thing, and it was way more fun.
Camera's aimed right. It looks like it's aimed over here.
You're going to basically have a good shot of my nose hairs from there. I don't know.
Because I'm awesome. Are you a podium guy, or you move?
Well, I need the podium because I'm going to be doing some Visual Studio stuff.
How far will you go?
Not much more than where you are because I don't have a monitor, so I got to...
Podium is our goal here. This computer won't be in the way. That'll be good.
But definitely the podium is going to be required if they want to see code.
Still see me? This microphone is super close.
We like to see code. I can swing code. That's my favorite part of the whole thing. Well, there's one other one that's pretty fun, but I don't know how crazy I can do with that one. We have little kids here, so I got to change my presentation a little bit.
I'm pretty loud. It usually freaks me out anyway.
I talk about...
All right, everybody. I think we're about to begin.
Tay. I talk about Tay.
All those in the foyer.
I got to be nice what Tay is, though.
I'm using a foreign computer, so I don't know what I'm doing. More importantly, I don't even know how to switch slides. It doesn't have that little, you know, thing it goes to and all that kind of thing. Yeah, it's not the same on this computer screen, so.
Are you trying to kill that thing?
No, I can't. Apparently not. Hang on here. James, can you use your computer? No, it's off that side. Hey, look at that. There it is. We'll just start over. Or not. Okay, here we go. Hey, we're at PadNug. Did anyone know that?
Woohoo!
Mark Schramm came all the way from beautiful British Columbia to visit us tonight. Thank you very much, sir. Helmet escaping. They've gotten rid of their fires. He comes from, oh, finally clear air, and he comes down here.
Yeah.
Really nice.
That kind of sucks.
Yeah, that part. So be extra nice to him because of that. And if you've got any good shopping options, you know, the whole, we're like a duty-free town here.
That's tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So get your ideas throwing. We've already discussed the nice big Costco right down the street. So if you don't happen to know, PadNug is at these locations. That's a lot of them, I realize. One of the nice things is padnug.org does allow you to link to almost everything else. I highly encourage you to go subscribe to the PadNug YouTube channel, because Mike over here, who isn't PadNug, has more subscribers than we do, and I want as many as he does. Woo! By the way, everyone thank Mike for doing our video tonight. Woo! In theory, it's streaming right now. Is that true? It is. Yeah, there you go. Can you hear me on it, though? That's a big question. Yeah. Okay. Facebook, Twitter, if you want to know what's going on, go to the meetup group. If you somehow have missed it, here's the guest login for the wireless in the room. And I'm going to leave it up there for just a few more moments. Scream if you need it. No screams. Yeah.
That was way less than 2 moments.
It's 90 seconds. I have very small moments. Our supporting partners, well, as we've always discussed, the very reason we exist here is because Microsoft came up with a little thing called .NET years ago. We don't necessarily do .NET that much anymore, but so what made this group happen. Intel provides a great room for us. Darren, thank you for making that possible. And SureWeb does provide space for our online presence too. Now, we give stuff away too. And I know that we have Pluralsight. Oh,
Whoop.
oh, well. Yeah, anyway, what can you do? You have, we have JetBrains, sorry. We have JetBrains tonight. We have Node Millions, and we have Thirsty Lion to give away. And of course, we're going to go to Thirsty Lion afterwards. If you're fortunate enough to win that, it's a good reason to go. We have sponsors who make all this possible. With pizza, some of the giveaways in December, other stuff we do throughout the year. The very fact that we are an incorporated organization, we have fees to the state. All right. New Relic, is someone here from New Relic? I'm pretty sure I've seen a face. Oh, there's one right there.
Hey everyone, my name's Matt. I'm part of the recruiting team at New Relic. I currently don't have any Microsoft roles open. However, we will have a senior .NET developer coming open in the next couple weeks, as well as a senior program manager with infrastructure focus. So if anybody's in the market, feel free to contact me after.
And don't miss, Matt. Some of these people do know things that are not Microsoft. Shocking, I realize. Vanderhouen, I'm pretty sure I've seen someone from Vanderhouen. Where?
Hey,
Oh, there you are.
yeah,
There's a shadow on you. I apologize.
I'm Andrew with Vanderhouen. Been coming here a long time. I've seen many of your faces. I haven't seen them all, though. I normally do stay and go to the afterwards and all that kind of stuff, but I am not tonight because my wife is now in her doctoral program, and I very rarely get to see her. So I'm going to take advantage of that tonight. And anyways, shut up.
What would be nice is if you could bring Beth sometime. That would be nice.
I will try to do that.
Okay.
Anyways, I hire .NET developers, right, and all kinds of software engineers, and all over Portland at many different companies, and I love the chat. So pretty sure my cards are out here, and my coworkers' cards are out here, and with Vanderhouen, give me a shout.
Thanks, Andrew. Adroit, I don't know. Is someone here from Adroit today? For checks? Okay. SoftSource Consulting, there is someone here from SoftSource. Neil, do you want to, or I'll just go ahead and do it? Okay. So SoftSource Consulting is hiring. I know that because I happen to work there. And we would love to hear from you. I really like this place, so I'll give it a personal plug. What she said. She was acting up on that. Anyone from Home Depot tonight? Quote Center? You know that we have a software side of Home Depot here in the region. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yes, yes. This is not hammers that we're talking about here. Okay.
Learn something new every day.
Last I checked, they are hiring. So if you're interested, that is up toward Battleground, Washington. IT Motives. I know I've seen. There you are. You got the light on you. Good job, Angela.
I'm the only one here tonight from IT Motives. So I'm Angelo, seminary. We do what I call full stack technical recruiting. So direct hires, contractors, contract to hire, and yes, we are always looking for great .NET, C# developers. But you know what? We have a really great lineup of other roles too. Looking for like some polyglot principal engineers that might be looking around here over here on the west side, for instance, and over in Vancouver as well. So I'll be at the after hours. Come hit me up.
Excellent. Thank you. Tech Systems. You've got a light on you too, didn't you?
Oh, this is so shiny. The recruiters up here. Hi, I'm Danielle from Tech Systems. We're hiring a lot of .NET developers right now. We're extremely busy. Come talk to me in the after hours. We'll always buy you a drink. I think there's cards of mine up there. If there's not right now, there will be in a moment. Yeah, Home Depot is still hiring. We can help get you there.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. Robert Half. What's the T-shirt today?
Appropriately MS-DOS.
MS-DOS. I've heard of
Wow.
that. What does that do? For those who weren't here last month, it was Commodore.
Plays a little video game.
Commodore 64, right? Or,
Right.
yeah.
Bring up the next one. Stephen with Robert Half Technology specifically. Robert Half is one of the oldest, the oldest and largest staffing company in the world now. We are looking for a few different types of developers, specifically full stack web developers. I do need a couple QA people who know SQL really well. So if you know anybody, please throw them my way. I will be here for the after party. If you have a business card, say hi, get a beer. Look forward to seeing you all again.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all for your help out. So, things coming. Willamette Valley software engineer. Angela, I think you've got some speaker that needs to learn more about presenting.
You know, it was great. I was at a conference. Scott was at the same conference. We got talking. Next thing you know, we got him scheduled to come down on Thursday night.
Excellent.
Yeah.
He's
going to have Qdoba.
Qdoba?
Yeah.
Well, for him, that's the thing. He's a big fan. Excellent. Excellent. I hope a lot of people. How much do you have room? I mean.
Yeah, room is getting full, but we have room. You know, it's the meetup tool. If you're planning on attending, we're going to be tight, but it'd be great to know if we need to find another location at the last minute. We have a backup plan.
I intend to be there. So.
Okay.
That's worth driving south for. September 12th. I don't know enough about this. Joe Dunn sent me a note that there's the Microsoft Technical Expo coming on, that's Saturday if I recall my dates correctly, or something like that. Anyway, that's going to be in town. Go to mtxportland.com to find out more. And there's $50 off if you're a PadNeg person. I believe it was $200 was the straight price. Squad, September 13th. Do you happen to know anything, Angelo, on what's happening at Squad?
No, just
okay.
I mean, just with the lineup with Michael, but other than that, I don't.
Thank you. PadNeg West Side on September 19th. Always a good time. For our out-of-town guests, we have geek dinners. We used to do nerd dinners in the mall, but more people come out when there's beer. It's weird. I don't know why.
Go figure.
So we've been doing geek dinners, and the same place we go tonight, Thirsty Lion. There's a different Thirsty Lion we go to for this one. And then on, you see down there, September 26th, we have the East Side PadNeg Geek Dinner. And that Geek Dinner was at a third Thirsty Lion, but we don't have that one anymore. Same company owns a place called Grand Central Bowling, and that was fun. Did anyone in the audience get to go to that one? Eric, you did? Yeah, you guys did. It was, I see some real potential at that place. They have video games. They have bowling alleys. We can get a couple of private bowling alleys if enough people are interested in doing bowling. So this could be one of our more fun events to go to. Not as many people can go as PadNeg itself, though. So in the meantime, September 20th, there's Portland Mobile.net Developers Group, the Xamarin Group, and Agile PDX is meeting the same night. Then TypeScript. Churchill?
Yes.
What's happening on TypeScript this next month, September 26th?
Well, we're still need a speaker, and unfortunately, we lost the place that we normally do our meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the company that's hosted us the last couple of years moved to a smaller location. So if anyone wants to host a meetup, if that sounds like something that would be interesting to you all.
Matt? Where's Matt? Go talk to Matt. He must be outside now.
All right.
They do.
Yeah.
They're actively looking for stuff.
All right. We don't destroy things too often.
Yeah.
We're not too happy.
Yeah. Just don't bring firecrackers and throw them down the cliff, okay?
Pro tip.
SQL Server User Group, September 28th. PadNeg, we're back here in PadNeg in October 3rd. Scott's bringing some of the ASP.NET Core team down to present to us next month. Geek Dinner, West Side and East Side. November, we have Jeremy Foster coming down to do additional bot framework presentation. And the expectation is he's going to see what Mark does first so he doesn't repeat a bunch of stuff. So if he repeats stuff, he's going to get picked on a little bit. And then December, shocking, but that same young man that's going to Salem this week, he's going to be back here at PadNeg for the big blowout December PadNeg meeting. We want to go over 300 this year. Last year was 275. I want y'all to help make that happen. With little further ado, after we get done here, we're going to pop over to the local Thirsty Lion. How many people believe they'll be going, and why would you not? Okay. The speaker's going to be there too, so you know. Okay, we're going to call over there and make sure we've got plenty of space. They're good to us that way. I think they canceled the trivia night though, so it's just us. I don't think that did much. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Looking for a job? Got jobs? Nope. Mark, would you like to come up to the stage, sir?
I guess.
Okay. Hey, you can present from there, maybe.
No, probably not.
We'll make sure Mike's got it switching
Oh,
properly.
wait a minute.
It should be switching. It should be imminently switching if it's not already. Hey, it's a miracle. We've had a lot of miracles tonight.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark. I think we've already established that well and good by now. I am visiting from Vancouver. I have my own consulting company, so I write code, I do paperwork, and then I get to write some code. I also I get to do one of the most fun things I get to do, which is at Microsoft, I help mentor or coach interns, university interns that are working in the garage, which is really neat because we get to see a lot of really cool things developed. If you've ever heard of the product Seeing AI, it's been inundated. It's basically a way for an app to see for those who cannot. And it uses cognitive services, some of the things we'll be talking about today. And I got to see it being developed by these students to the point where it was presented at Build by Satya himself, which is really kind of cool, and the interns get all googly over that. Probably a bad choice of term. However, the original title of this presentation was actually Bots and Brains, but I think Rich wanted something a little more formal sounding. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce you to the bot framework and some of the cognitive services that can help you make your bot a little more intelligent, if you will. We're not going to be going into too much depth today, but we will write code, we'll look at the code, we'll make it work, and whatever I do, you guys should be able to copy, no problem. Now, I think the presentation itself will be made available, I assume, Rich, is on the PadNug website at some point, I guess. On YouTube. Well, the presentation itself, but the actual PowerPoint thingy with all my notes and stuff. So, just a show of hands, who has worked with the bot framework so far? Well, this is great. You guys will all learn something incredibly new today. And a note on, we were talking about .NET and how it's being used. It's almost become the point where .NET sort of becomes ubiquitous. Almost anything you do with Microsoft is kind of by definition going to be .NET in some way, shape, or form, be it things like the bot framework or even their open source stuff. So it's interesting to see that .NET sort of is just sort of everywhere. Oh, I got to give a plug. A friend of mine who's also a Microsoft MVP, and I am a Microsoft MVP in Windows development, invented this neat little piece of software for Surface devices called, I think it's KeyPen X. It's a little piece of software you install, and it lets you use your pen as a PowerPoint remote control. So I can go forward, I can go back, and I can do it all just by clicking the button on the pen, which is kind of neat. It's useful. You don't have to spend $100 on a fancy clicker thing. The pen works great, except when it doesn't. What's that? Does it work on sound? No, it's because it's Bluetooth connected to my machine. It's actually taken the button push that normally launches OneNote, and it's told it to launch instead or do a PowerPoint next slide, and push it twice, and they're all addressable things that you can do. And he wrote a little app that does it for you. I didn't look at the code, so I couldn't tell you exactly how it works. So what we want to cover today is we're going to talk about, the brains behind the bots. So Microsoft has provided a lot of cognitive services. Now, I originally did this presentation about a year ago, I guess, and bots were originally announced, and I think the framework is, or the cognitive services at Build in 2016. Basically, before I came here, I had to rewrite everything because everything has changed. They've added more stuff. They've added a lot more features. And so we're going to cover, basically look at the cognitive services that are available. Some we'll use with the bot and some we won't, but we'll cover the breadth of what is available anyway. When we're talking about the different cognitive services, we'll talk about what they're good for. We will not be using them all. There are a lot of them, and we just simply can't cover them in the amount of time I have, or the thirsty line will be closed, and that will make everybody sad. The other thing we're going to talk about is are bots the new apps? So everybody's got a smartphone of some sort. I actually have a Windows phone. There is a couple here that have them. I saw they're rare, and I figure that if I hold on to this long enough, it'll be worth something as a collectible, I think. But our apps or our bots, in some way, shape, or form, going to replace a lot of the functionality that we expect in apps today. The answer is somewhat for some things, but we'll go into more detail on that. So we're going to start with cognitive services. We're going to work our way forward, basically. We're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. So there are lots of people doing artificial intelligence, or what Microsoft calls cognitive services. You guys are probably familiar with IBM's Watson. It was on Jeopardy and beat Ken Jennings, I think, if that means anything to anybody. But that was really a showy bit of what Watson is really doing behind the scenes, which is very much what a lot of the things that we're seeing from Microsoft, and we're seeing from Amazon on their AWS, Google now, even Apple's getting into the action with a lot of the making the ability to add functionality to Siri. Microsoft calls them Cortana skills. Anybody, how do you guys pronounce Cortana? Is it Cortana or Cortana? It's Cortana. I'm always told, because I usually say Cortana, and everybody says, oh, Canadian! Apparently we pronounce things a little bit differently. So I try to really make a conscious effort to say Cortana. It makes the people at Microsoft and Redmond much happier. So what we're going to focus on today is the Microsoft cognitive services and what they all are and how they work and how you might use them. So when I first did this presentation, there were 20 different cognitive services available. Things like natural language, things like image recognition. Unfortunately, by the time I did the presentation the second time, there was 26 different cognitive services, so I had to change my presentation. Now, there are 30 different cognitive services, and on the Cognitive Services website, they provide those 30 cognitive services, but they also provide a number of labs that allows you, basically gives you the starter code to use those cognitive services in your own applications. They're not limited to use with bots. Obviously, the cognitive services are available to you in any app you write, in any way you write them. And they are not limited to Microsoft applications. So I can just as easily use cognitive services from an iOS app or an Android app or a website anywhere I want, because all the cognitive services are just accessible by REST web services. And I should say, if you do have any questions, I've been told when I have to be out of here, but I'm happy to answer questions as we go because I have a short-term memory thing, and if you ask it at the end, I'll forget what I was talking about. So feel free to ask. Okay, so now we're going to sort of go through a catalog of all the different cognitive services. How many of you have used cognitive services in some way or explored them or checked them out? So 3 or 4 people. Well, you're in for a treat. This is some really cool stuff. Normally I would say that in a slightly different way, but I can't today. Okay, so they come in, I think, 5 different categories. The first category that we're going to talk about is vision. Vision is not something you're probably going to use with a bot, but you could. I talked about the Vision AI. An example application of the Vision cognitive services is somebody who is blind and is sitting in a chair and somebody walks by. the app can say person in red shirt or teen in red shirt on skateboard has just gone by. The vision is that good. It can see that. Or an example that the students did is they hold the app in front of a menu and the app is able to say, go left, go right, go, I got it. Okay, the main titles on the menu are, there are appetizers, main courses, blah, blah, blah. Which one are you interested in? You can say appetizers, then it'll read the appetizers and give you the prices and the contents of it. The vision stuff is really cool. And it's, I think, life-changing to a lot of people. So the computer vision AI API is just that. You send it a picture and it tells you what's in the picture. So for example, if you look up, I don't have the video here, but if you look up the video for Vision AI, it literally was a man sitting on a bench. He's wearing he's a gentleman from London, and he's wearing some prototype glasses that have a little camera in them, and they're hooked up to his phone through Bluetooth. And it literally, he just looks out there and it says, young couple playing Frisbee. Now he's sitting beside somebody who's sighted. She doesn't have to tell him what's there. She can see it, or he can see it on his own. The Face API is really a lot of fun. There's actually a website you can go to where it'll take your picture, and I swear it will not save it and share it with, say, Google. And it will tell you how old you are and what your general emotion is, happy, sad, whatever. Sadly, it's actually fairly accurate on the age. Happily, it was completely wrong with my wife, and it like underestimated her age by 10 or 15 years. She loves what I do for a living now.
I was 35, by the way.
What's that?
I said I was 35.
Wow, dead on. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. As far as we know.
Yeah, it was pretty accurate with me, and we won't discuss that anymore. So some of the new things that have been released are, well, the Emotion API is tied to the Face API, and it tells you if you're looking at pictures of some happy people or sad people or whatever. I did a demo, took a bunch of pictures of Satya, and it was like the many emotions of Satya. Happy, happy, unknown, happy, happy. It was really not that interesting. Video API does the same thing, but it does it to a video. So that's where you get the person skateboarding across. It was able to discern what was going on. The two new ones, or at least one of the new ones that was added, or the two new ones, were Custom Vision Service and the Video Indexer. The Vision API is kind of limited in what it sees. It has to know what it's looking at to be able to discern what it is. So it has to be aware that there are people that ride skateboards or something like that. The Custom Vision API allows you to create a custom set of recognizers. So for example, if you wanted a custom medical app that could recognize medical instruments, those may not be in there. You can create that catalog and have it automatically figure those out. And the Video Indexer is really cool. If you guys have seen, I don't know, has anybody seen some of the preview stuff for the Microsoft Windows 10 Creators Fall Update? That's a mouthful. There's a new app coming for your photos that allows you basically to open up the photo app in Windows 10, and it shows you little thumbnail pictures of all the people that are in your photographs. You click on one and it finds the photographs because it's pre-indexed all your pictures and is able to, on your machine, so it's not somewhere non-private, it's using your OneDrive, and you're able to find or create slideshows of, say, your dog or your daughter or whoever, and it's able to recognize them, so there's no more needing for you to tag your pictures with who's in them. It does it for you. It's really cool. Speech. So speech is really cool. They're all really cool. I'm going to probably stop saying that. So the Translator Speech API, you may have seen a video. If you've used Skype with Translate, it does the same thing. Basically, you speak, and then it speaks the translated version. So if you're having a conversation with somebody in China, for example, I can say, hello, how are you? And they hear in Mandarin the same thing. Likewise, when they reply back to me on Skype, I get the English part. It's pretty neat, and it's live. Speaker Recognition API, that's actually used in a lot in conferencing where it recognizes the speaker. It's also used in the vision indexer or the video indexer. So if it indexes a video, for example, the keynote speech from Build, where there are maybe a dozen different speakers, it recognizes the different speakers and identifies them, and you can say, show me the part where Satya speaks, or show me the part where Panos gets up and talks, or whatever. And it can recognize those people in the video. A Bing Speech API is basically the ability to have it take text to speech, basically. And the custom speech service, again, is the same thing as like the video one. If you have vertical specific text, for example, if you're in a nuclear reactor facility and there's very specific language associated with that job that you do, you can create custom recognizers for speech that allows you to do the translation and all those things using the custom service. Language understanding intelligence service, we will use that one today. It's better known as LUIS. Has anybody heard of LUIS? Again, the same 3 or 4 people. Well, we won't ask that anymore because LUIS is basically the shortcut for saying, basically, I can give it text, or I can give it a what they call an intent, a sentence that says, please tell me how to coach baseball. I might give it a couple of sentences like that, and it's smart enough now to recognize or discern other questions that relate to that. So how do I could say, how do I teach baseball? It knows that's my intent was, how do I coach baseball? How do I help somebody know how to use or play baseball? The English language is a stupid language. There's an unlimited number of ways of saying the same thing over and over again. LUIS allows you to do that, and LUIS learns as it goes. So the more people that use it in your bot, for example, the more intelligent it gets at discerning what the intent of the question was. LUIS also was able to pick out particular topics within that. So for example, it not only can tell you that it wants to know how to coach, but baseball. And then if I said, how do I coach football? It's smart enough to say, oh, that's another sport. So they want to know how to coach, and I'll tell the app that's called me, they want to coach baseball or football or hockey or whatever. I got to get hockey in there once I'm Canadian. It's like a rule. Text analytics. Okay, so text analytics allows you to look at text that comes in and understand things about it. The emotion of the text that came in, for example, is just one example of it. I'm not going to go through all of them because it does a bunch of different things and it gets a bunch of statistics about the information. Bing Spell Check API, wonderful tool that allows you to dynamically spell check stuff that comes in. And I'll show you an app that I wrote. It was a bot that used the spell check to fix misspelled words or problematic words. And it'll make more sense later. The translator text API allows you to do the same thing that the speech one does, but do it with text. So if you're doing typed Skype, it'll do the translation for you. The web language model API, quite honestly, I've never used that one. I have no idea. So we'll just skip that one. Linguistic analysis API. Who loved in English in high school or university doing grammar? Okay, there's a couple of freaks in the class. This thing does it for you. This is a student's dream. You could write an app that would be every student's dream. It'll take any sentence you give it and break it down by parts of speech I never heard of, down to the minuscule little bits of conjunctions and all kinds of weird things. You know, it's amazing how much it breaks it down and gives it to you in perfect form. I think there's something that universities will not be happy about, but I think it's great because I hate grammar. I've had the opportunity to work with somebody who's ESL, and I've learned an appreciation for how stupid the English language is and how hard it is to do grammar, because the grammar gets all weird when you work in a language, for example, like Japanese, where the grammar is very simple, it's always the same. English is always different. This thing will solve it for you. Knowledge. Everybody wants knowledge. Knowledge is power. So these ones are kind of a little bit different. They're more about information. So recommendations API is you can give it in a couple of examples. For example, if you're doing a bot where you're talking about car parts, well, you can give it a couple of parts, like a camshaft and a crankshaft, and it can provide recommendations of other car parts automatically based on the context of what you gave it. It's pretty cool. Academic knowledge API, it's basically, allows you to gain knowledge from, well, actually, I'm not sure what that one. It probably is research. A lot of these things just got added, and I haven't had a chance to research them myself yet. Maybe if I had something like an academic knowledge API, it would make it easier. Knowledge exploration service is just a way of gathering information and presenting it in a way, and do analysis on the information to provide it in a way that makes sense. The internet has a lot of information on it. And when you do, I'm sure you've all done a Google search where you get back 32,000 pages of information. This helps to consolidate it and create it. It's sort of like building business information cubes, but out of data that's not specifically number crunching. Q&A Maker we'll actually use tonight. It's a way for you to create a bot that makes use of Lewis and things behind the scenes without having to write any code. So you can create a bot that answers questions without writing any code. Just provide it information and it builds all the stuff around it for you. We'll do it here. It's really slick. So I won't go into that much. Entity linking intelligence service. That's a way of connecting data together. So connecting information together. Basically creating entities that are creating relationships between the data, car parts to tools to other things. Haven't gone into too much depth on that. Custom decision service is basically a way to create vertical information to be able to create decisions based on data that's been input. What's an example? So you've collected data with regards to, it's really machine learning to a certain extent. You collect data, I don't know an example, I'm trying to think of one. The decision service allows you to create, now, drawing a blank. Oh well, I'll think about it and talk about it afterwards. It's not one we're going to be using tonight, it's one that you can go to later. Search are all pretty straightforward. I'm going to move through these now because we want to get to the code. So the ability to do Bing image searches. So you can say, show me a picture of Satchu who's happy, and it'll go search the internet and find that picture for you. You can do web searches. So for example, if your bot provides resources and it can't find the resource in its own information, and go out and do a search using the Bing web search. Custom search is to be able to tune it specifically particular verticals or groups of information, and entity search is the same thing. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to use today. There's two main applications that we're going to be using with our bot today. One is Lewis, which is the natural language understanding, and the second thing is that Q&A Maker. So I'm going to show you Lewis just briefly, if this all works properly. Okay. I'll just see if I can zoom in a little bit. Okay. So Lewis allows you to create applications that understand what the intent of questions was, or the intent of a statement is. So for example, I've created this thing called PadNug, which is just a random name I came up with. And inside there, we have what are called three intents. And I'll show you what an intent is so it makes more sense. So basically, I have two intents that are build something and one that is take something down. Random. It could be, how do I coach? Or how do I play a game, or anything like that. You can have any number of intents. You're allowed quite a few of them. This was all expanded as well, but we won't worry about that right now. So for example, if we look at build something, I've added, or it's learned, how do I build a something? How do I make a something? How do I create a something? This allows me to gives me a foundation for the intent. But I can ask things that are close to this or not even close to this, and it can discern what I mean based on what's already in there. When you create these intents, you give it some seeds of those statements, you train it, and then you have at it. As people use it, you're going to get suggested utterances, like how do I make a, or how do I take down a, and it'll learn from those. So for example, if I go to train and test, and I say, how do I create a toothbrush? So it's figured out, it's build something. I never trained it on this. 78% probability that that's what I was asking. And it knows that toothbrush is the subject. So it's figured out that I want to know how to make a toothbrush. That information gets passed to my bot. So I'm able to say, aha, it wants to know how to make something. It wants to know how to make a toothbrush. So I can put logic in my code now, in my case C#, that just will handle that and present them the information they need. I could do a Bing web search, or I could have stored specific information about it. Does that make sense to everybody?
So to get to that point, do you have to type in those 3 seed things?
Yes.
What did you start with?
Okay, 2 ways you can do it. Well, it's probably more than 2. But basically, I create an intent, and I call it anything I want. So where do I, or we'll just call it drink beer. Drink beverage. So now it needs some seeds. So for example, where can I drink a Pepsi? Okay. And I can do I am thirsty. And let's say, beg your pardon? I'm Friday? Maybe that might not work too well. It might confuse it. Okay. Let's just leave those 2 in there and see if that's enough. Oop. Nope. I always forget, hit the save button. Then we go to train and test. We have to train the application. And hopefully, if it has enough examples, I can say, where can I get a Coke? It builds something, 27%. Drink beverage was 17%. So what I can do is I can go in and say, no, that one was drink beverage, and next time it'll know. It'll learn that, and it'll add that to the collection that it uses to build its thing. It's knowledge base. I can also create a text file with all these things in it and just import them all in one shot.
And is that knowledge base local to this configuration, or is it global to all users of the system?
You. Okay. So you're not sharing this with anybody. So you have the concept of intents. What are the intents? You can have as many, I think it's up to 80 or some different intents. I cannot recommend creating an application that has 80 different intents. It should be more focused than that. And a whole bunch of entities, which are the parameters. So you can have in the sentence a whole bunch of parameters that it passes to your application as pass parameters. So we'll show you Q&A Maker. This is neat. It's Q&A Maker.ai. Anybody can use it. It's free, and you can use it in it's in preview mode, but you could create, for example, a replacement for your Q&A or FAQ page. In our example, we're going to build one, and I'll show you how easy it is. So here's a web page from Sears. Sears is still a thing, right? Okay, so here's a Sears homepage with a typical FAQ. Normally when I want to know something, I would have to go through here and search through all of these to find what I'm looking for and hope I find it. Then drill into it and get more information about it. Okay? What I can do instead is take that URL, go to Q&A Maker, and this works against most FAQ pages, and I'll just say create a new service. So here's 101. Give it the URL, or you could give it a text file that has all your FAQs in it and create it. It doesn't take that long. So it creates a knowledge base of all the information. I can go and tweak it if I want to, but I don't need to. So I'm going to save and retrain it. I haven't published it, but I can publish it to be public, and I can put it on my website as a little chat bot. So I'll go to test, and you can see how it works. So here's my little chat bot. Let's get rid of that. And let's say, where can I get warranty service? Not a good answer, because I probably spelled warranty wrong. No. But what it did here is I said, where can I get the warranty service? It told me what answer it got, but I can actually choose from a bunch of other ones that are here, and I can say that one. And that will train it. So next time somebody asks that question, even with the bad spelling, it'll get the right answer. So what's an example of one? Sure. What are your hours? Nope.
Do you price match?
Oh, do you price match? Yes, we price match. Lowe's and Home Depot on new heating and cooling systems. So that was a good example of one. You should be up here doing this. Okay. How do I book an appointment?
So is this spitting back answers that are already in the fact, or is it generating new answers?
The answer is because of what we did, it's just spitting back the image. But I can add new ones, or I can change the ones that are in there because it's now data that's in the app. So if I go to, for example, here, schedule, I can add alternate text, and it'll randomize the answers if I want it to. So it'll pick from any number of ones that are there. Or I can go to the knowledge base itself and edit them to make them more useful or add more things to it.
Can you maybe bracket words like warranty and have variations of that misspelled so it can target?
You can in Lewis. In fact, Lewis has a really slick way of creating a synonym library where you can create all kinds of synonyms for the same thing. So, for example, skiing, you might have downhill skiing, freestyle skiing, but you may just want skiing. So you can create synonyms for them. And if anybody uses any of those things, the one will appear. You can do that. I'm not sure if you can do that in here. I don't think it has the synonym library because it's intended to be an introduction, but you can use Lewis to create that. And you can use this data in Lewis. Somebody over here had their arm up.
Are these conversations stateful, or is each question and answer an independent transaction?
This is not a stateful. It's independent transaction. Again, with Lewis, though, you can create, and the bot framework, when you're doing the code yourself, you can create trending, you track the conversation. So you know what previous questions were asked, what answers were given, and you can extend all that.
I can't see the URL. What is the URL for this?
Q&A-maker.ai.
What's that?
Q&A-maker.ai.
Hang on. How's that? You only need the first part. You don't need all the other stuff.
Does it have Slack integration?
This one doesn't, but the bot framework does. So this one creates a referenceable entity that you can host in a frame on your web page or whatever. You can't, well, let's see. If I publish it, what are my choices? No, this one doesn't. But in the bot framework, you have about 10 or 12 different channels you can use. Things like Slack or Skype or Skype for Business now or Cortana or a bunch of other ones that are available. Kik is another one. So yes, but this is an introductory thing. It's bare bones. It's a really neat way to get something, a simple process working. So for example, if I want to replace my ugly FAQ page with a simple chatbot, this would be a way to do it. Okay. So now we talked about Q&A Maker, which is the most simple bot you can possibly imagine. We'll talk about bots from the context that we want to care about, which is a bot I can publish in any number of different channels, including a web page if I wanted to. So again, there are people that are doing bots besides Microsoft. I am not a Microsoft employee. I can talk about other people's stuff. It's okay. Because I've worked with the bot framework, I kind of think it's the best, but that's more of a biased opinion because I know it. Better the devil you know. So Google Actions, anybody heard of Amazon Lex? Amazon Lex is basically the ability to create skills for Alexa. Basically, you can create your own chatbot, audio chatbot for Alexa. FlowXO is very similar to Microsoft in a lot of ways in that you can create a bot that provides multiple channels for distribution. So you can publish it to, for example, Slack. Slack has their own bot framework they use as well. So you can create bots in Slack. But unfortunately, anything you create in there is only for there. It's not going to work in any other channel. Microsoft bot framework has like Google Messenger, Slack. I think we'll show a list of the different channels. There's quite a number of them, and I'll show them to you. Matter of fact, I think I have it here. So the channels available are Bing, so you can have a chatbot right on the Bing page, because everybody uses Bing to search, right? Oh, come on. It's actually really cool because you can create, when you do a search in Bing, you can have, if a particular thing pops up that includes your bot, you can have the bot actually pop up on the side and say, how can I help you? Which is kind of neat. World Wide Web, so it's just a frame you stick into your web page. Mail, Google Messenger, GroupMe. Anybody ever use GroupMe? It's actually a really cool application. I've got quite a few friends that use it, and I participate with them. And so there's quite a number that are there. Okay. So one of the questions that gets asked a lot is why bots or why not? Later this month, I'm going to be at Ignite. I don't know, is anybody going to Ignite this year in Florida? And I'm doing a kind of a weird presentation for me. It's a discussion. It's put up a couple slides and then talk about stuff. And one of the things we're going to talk about is when do you use a bot and when do you don't? Just like anything else that's, quote, trendy, people tend to say, I know, I'll use a bot because that's cool, it's new, I want to learn it. But bots aren't always necessarily the best answer. Bots are typically used, well, the first bots were like the world-renowned pizza bot, a bot to order pizza. Well, you know, it's kind of cool, but isn't it just easier to use a web page? Maybe it is. There are a lot of different kinds of bots out there, and where are they useful? I'll show you an example of one that we've found very simple. It's one I worked on in British Columbia to provide assistance to disabled athletes and their coaches in finding resources that they couldn't easily find with Google. That was sort of well, I'll show you more about it later, but it was an interesting use of the bot. So bots sort of have become more popular or more useful because of the advent of tools like the cognitive services. So artificial intelligence is being improved, makes a big difference in the bots being useful. Otherwise, you get, does anybody remember, there's a few people here, especially somebody wearing an MS-DOS shirt, I'm thinking. Is he still here? Somebody was wearing an MS-DOS shirt. Oh, he's not there. There was an application years ago in the 80s and maybe the 70s called Liza, or Eliza. It might have been Eliza, right? And it was basically a psychoanalyst chatbot.
How does that make you feel?
Yes. No matter what question or whatever you said to it, it came back with a question about how you feel, or that's very interesting, tell me more. Or it was a completely useless thing, but in high school we crowded around a computer, we wasted tons of paper on a deck writer 910 or deck writer as we reamed through all these stupid questions and entered in our deepest, darkest secrets to it. But that was a really stupid thing. It couldn't do anything with the data that you actually got unless somebody specifically coded it to recognize the exact phrase that somebody entered, which is almost impossible. With artificial intelligence and language understanding and a lot of other things that are going into it, you can be a lot more creative in how you handle the information. The fact that there's more data out there, I don't know the numbers, but we are creating data at an enormous rate and storing it somewhere. Beg your pardon? Did I hear somebody? Do you know the number? No? It's a lot. And that number, that data, more importantly, is becoming indexed. It's becoming more searchable. It's becoming easier to find. And that makes things like Cortana and Siri better than they would have been. When Siri was first released, it really couldn't do very much because it needed to collect data that it then used to get smarter at what it does. And Siri has become better at what it does. Some might argue that Alexa became better at it faster because Alexa was a much narrower scope of what it had to do. Siri was really saying, ask me anything, whereas Alexa says, this is what I do, and I do it really well. And anything else, I'll just refer you to a search engine. The other thing that's really important in bot usage is the fact that messaging has become prevalent in mobile apps. How many have teen kids? The only way I can communicate with my 16-year-old daughter is to send her a text message. Or at least the guaranteed way of getting her attention. Other than actually pulling the plug on my Wi-Fi router. That gets her attention really fast. But the chat paradigm has become very important. And so when people go to communicate with something, if the chat's there, it's something that's familiar and it's easier to use. So the bot gives you the ability to add that to other applications that you wouldn't normally have had, a tapping information or multiple pages that you have to go through. Instead, walk them through asking the questions of what they need. There's nothing more frustrating than going to a web page and choosing poorly. And you end up going down a path that you can't get back at. You can't get back to the beginning, whereas with a chatbot, in theory, you can self-correct a little bit by saying, well, that was a dumb thing to say. Let's try that again, and go back and do it again. So the statement is, a bot isn't any different than an app. An app is an entity or a thing that solves a problem. If it tries to solve all problems, it will fail. If it doesn't solve any problems, nobody's going to care. A chatbot is the same thing. It needs to be something that solves a problem. And the fewer problems it tries to solve, the better you get at it. Something like Siri or Cortana, they've got huge teams of people that are trying to solve all things for all people, and that's okay. But you don't need to do that. Think about the apps that are most successful in the iOS store, the Apple store, or whatever it's called, and they're the ones that do something very simply and do it extremely well. Chatbot is the same thing. Also running anywhere on any device. We talked about that a little bit earlier. The bot framework and the cognitive services work on any device, on any platform. It doesn't matter. And some of the new things they released or announced at Build this year, like adaptive cards, allows you to create the look that matches the device you're on. So on an iOS device, the chat bot looks like it belongs on iOS, whereas on Android it looks different. So some of the bots that are out there, and there are lots. Does anybody use Skype? Okay. Did you know that Skype has a whole library, a ton of bots in it that you can interact with? They're there. If you go into Skype on the left-hand side, one of the options on the drop-down menu from the hamburger menu is bots. And you can find bots like Pizza Ordering Bot, or Foursquare has a bot where you can ask it about restaurants in the area, and it'll provide answers, or it'll ask you questions. Where are you? Or can you give me your location? Or it'll interact with you to find the information it needs to search for what it wants. Okay, we talked about the Pizza Bot. Since Build 2016, everybody's talked about the Pizza Bot. Has anybody actually used the Pizza Bot? I'm guessing we didn't order that pizza through a Pizza Bot. Probably not. But it's a good example of an interactive questionnaire. So take it for what it's worth. It's a great way to say, I need to know the size. I need to know what sauce you want. I need to know what toppings. And that contiguous conversation of knowing what came before is a valuable thing. Bots for good. So one of the things I've been very involved in the last year and a half, 2 years, is inclusivity. So building apps for all people. It's something that's a very strong mantra at Microsoft, and I really firmly believe that it's a really worthwhile goal of Microsoft, and I've certainly taken it to heart. And when I build things, I try to build them so that anybody can use them. I've had personal experiences where I built things and I sat there in front of somebody who couldn't use my app because they were low vision or they needed high contrast, or there's any number of things that can go badly wrong, and you have to consider how do you build something for everybody. And that building for everybody could include building for somebody who has a broken arm and has only one arm or something because they broke it and it's in a cast or whatever. There's a lot of different things you can go through. And I'm going to actually show an example of this Ash bot. It's called the Accessibility Sport Hub. It's their marketing naming. I just wrote the code. They came up with a cool name, and I think it's pretty good. And I'll show you what it does. Who knows what Tay is? This is the one thing that I talk about that you will not see in a Microsoft presentation. Tay, I will try to describe in a family term. Tay was a chatbot that had no purpose other than to be a way to create conversation with somebody, to go back and forth. I think Tay was emulating a teenage girl or something like that. And it was a great concept. It was put out there. Unfortunately, within 24 hours, people discovered that Tay learned. And so they obligingly went out and taught Tay. So those that are laughing understand that Tay became a pretty nasty piece of work. Within 24 hours, she had to be pulled down because she was supporting a lot of hateful things. Let's just leave it at that. But Microsoft learned. They learned from the experience of Tay that you can allow it to learn, but you have to learn with purpose or learn with some filters. So Tay came up with Zoe. Has anybody heard of Zoe? Okay, Zoe is a lot more boring than Tay. Zoe doesn't make headlines. Zoe is exactly what they want it to be. It's the same thing. It's a chatbot. It's a fun chatbot. For example, we added Zoe to a bunch of MVP have a group meet, and we added Zoe to it. And Zoe will occasionally jump into the conversation and say, what was an example? She'll tell a joke or something, and it'll be a sweet, sort of innocent, probably not that funny joke, but it's funny because it's not funny. Also, do you ever guys watch Jimmy Fallon? He does his superlatives. Well, Zoe does superlatives too, so you can say what would be my superlative, and she'll take a picture of you and come up with something. I think mine was most likely to die from over fidget spinner use or something. But the thing is that they learned, and they created a chatbot that allowed you to interact with it. It learns to a point, but it also has filters to say, this is not acceptable, don't learn this. And she'll reply back in an appropriate way when you try to teach her something that's inappropriate. Zo, just like Tay, is a method of learning and improving on the technology and the artificial intelligence. They're always collecting information about how people interact with these artificial entities. One of the things I can't stress this enough, when you create a bot, do not try to make a bot that's like a person, because it's not. The bot is a bot. When you're dealing with people, always make sure it's obvious it's a bot. When they need a person, transfer them to a person or do that. But don't make a bot simulate a person. I think there's not a lot of value in that, and it just is opening yourself up to get a very unhappy person using your bot, because if they assume it's a person, they'll assume it works like a person, and it doesn't. And you are not going to account for all the things that that bot needs to do, and then you're going to get a very unhappy person that's using your bot, and all kinds of bad trouble can happen from that. So this is a video of a bot that I created along with a group in Vancouver that was an outgrowth of the 2010 Olympics Legacy Fund to create a resource for people with disabilities and their coaches and parents. I think this is just kind of neat. Oh, I didn't click in the right place. Nuts. I'm going to guess we don't have sound. Let's try it again. I know we were plugged in differently.
One of our approaches in terms of building an active British Columbia is to remove barriers and obstacles to...
Can you hear that? Okay. It's coming through my speakers, not yours, I don't think. That's okay. Oh, nuts. Okay, let's try it again.
One of our approaches in terms of building an active British Columbia is to remove barriers and obstacles to participation. And so one big one is for people living with disabilities. We have lots of expertise in Canada and BC that will help people build the competence and the confidence to invite people living with disabilities into their sport, but they don't have access to it. And so that was the dilemma and the problem of how do we connect motivated coaches and officials and parents with information around sport and accessibility. And so we approached Microsoft and said, do you have any suggestions about how we do this in a user-centric, people-centric way? And that's where their idea of leveraging the bot came from.
We came up with something that we thought would meet their unique challenges. The big problem was that you get 13,000 pages of information and no way of knowing what would be ideal. Having a method of narrowing that down to be things that were already pre-vetted, if you will, was a valuable thing.
So we thought that building a chatbot for VIA Sport would be a great way to get these resources to athletes of all abilities in a much more streamlined way. The main technology that we're using to build this bot is the Microsoft Bot Framework, which is an open source SDK that allows you to build chatbots in either C# or node.js. The APIs that we'll be using are Lewis for intent understanding, the Sentiment API to determine whether our resources have been received well by the user. We'll also be using the spell check API and Bing Web Search as well. By using these APIs, we can better understand what the user's intentions are and then help tailor the results in a more behind-the-scenes sort of streamlined way. Now we're also using Power BI, which is the service within Azure, to create dashboards and handle the analytics for the bot to really help VIA Sport understand who is using the technology, why they're using it, and most importantly, where the gaps are. VIA Sport is all about providing these resources, and by tying in Power BI, we'll be able to give them a richer understanding of exactly where they can better support their users.
We would like to be innovative. We want to do things differently, and it's not for the purpose of just being different. The sports sector, as many sectors, non-for-profit sectors, often get stuck in this is the way it's been. This is the old adage. It's never been done that way before, so if we can do something helpful and long-term have more people signing up and playing sport and then being more healthy individuals, then the world is a better place, and that's our philosophy overall.
So other than the coolness of the topic that we did, we made a good use of cognitive services. We used a sentiment analysis to be able to say, if the user is being upset, provide them help. And we could take it to another level we haven't yet at this point, but if the user is still being upset after you provided help, transfer them to a real person. We used Bing spell check to correct, but we also built in, we built it ourselves, but we could do it now with the ability to create synonyms inside the Lewis. If somebody uses an inappropriate or outdated term for disability, we will self-correct them. We'll not say, well, that was wrong, shame on you. We just sort of say, oh, we're going to search for people of short stature instead of any other term they might have used. So we're using the ability to solve problems in some interesting ways. And of course, Lewis, we use the natural language stuff. Okay, enough of me talking. Who wants to see some code? Okay. So I'm going to be using, in this case, Visual Studio 2015, mostly because it does not crash as often as 2017 does. And I thought it would be nice if we could do that. So I'm going to try to do things so that we can zoom in as necessary. We're going to build it from scratch. We're going to use that Lewis setup we did for how to make or how to take down stuff. I'm not going to write that now. We're going to focus on the bot. When we create a bot, I wish there was a way to zoom in on this. I have a mouse. I do not. Okay. So basically, I'm going to create a new project. Simple as this. Now, inside Visual Studio, you have a bunch of installed templates, but you have some ones that are online. We'll see if our internet's working here. But you can just go into there and search for bot, and it should come up with bot applications. Once you've downloaded it, you don't need to download it again. It'll be on your machine permanently, and you can just grab it anytime you want. This will create a very simple, slightly older version of the bot framework, which you can simply upgrade using the NuGet package manager. We'll just call it bot application 1. And what this will do is it'll install everything we need to get going and create a very simple bot. While it's doing that, the other tool you need to do is you need to download something called the Microsoft Bot Emulator. It's a tool that allows you to simulate a bot in a debug environment, so you can start up your bot, open up the bot emulator, and anything you do in there can drop into the debug and do all those things that you normally like to see in Visual Studio. So while it's building that, I will start our bot emulator. I provide the link at the end. That's fine. It can't add application insights right now, and that's fine. We don't need it. Application insights is a really useful thing in the bot. It allows you to do things like feed information into Power BI to allow you to see things like who's asking questions of the bot, or rather where are they from North America or Canada. It also allows you to see what questions they're asking. You can put in custom actions to say, you know, how many times did we successfully interpret what they'd ask, and how many times did we fail to interpret what they want and had to ask for help, or how many times did they ask for help, or any of those, any number of things that you can put in there. Okay, so let's view our Solution Explorer. Okay, so the bot that it creates is fairly simple. We won't need service references. We basically have a single controller called Messages Controller, and we'll access it through a simple API messages access point. It is just really that simple to do. Nothing else here is necessary. We have a default HTML because it does deploy as an app service, for example, in Azure. You can deploy the bot to anywhere you like. you have to know where you deployed it to register it with the bot framework so that you can deploy it to different channels. If you just want to deploy it to your own machine to play with, you don't need to use the bot framework website at all to register the app. You can do it all internally, never have anything pushed out to the public. And we're going to do that here. We're not going to use anything public. We're just going to strictly do things locally. And in that case, all we care about is the messages controller. And that's pretty simple. I can probably zoom this in a bit. We don't need this just yet. So it's pretty simple. When a message comes in, it'll come in as a post and we'll handle it in some way. In this case, we check to see if it's a message, and then we just echo the message back by basically counting the number of characters and echoing it back. That's all it does. It's an echo bot. So I'm going to start it. It will launch my browser, but really what it's done underneath the covers is launched a local version of IIS that hosts the bot, which we will then connect to using the bot emulator. And you can see our address is localhost 3979. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to my emulator. And basically I want localhost 3979, and then I tack on the API messages. I don't need a Microsoft App ID and password. If I had registered it in the bot framework and I wanted to connect to it using that specific sequence, I could add those in there. I don't need to do that here because I don't have it registered. So if I connect and all goes well, this will tell us if it's a live demo or not. It will connect down the right-hand side, down the lower right-hand side, and I can't zoom that up, but let's see, I can do this. So basically it tells us that it's listening, it connects to it, and it returns back. As other things get returned to us, we'll see notices. You can click on those things. Oh, we don't have anything to click on yet. So let's ask a question. Hello, how are you? Now all it's going to do is count those number of characters and send them back to me. You sent hello, how are you, which is 19 characters. Which, if I click on that, what it actually did is created a JSON package that it sent to the emulator that it knows how to interpret. So it sends a message back, it tells us that it's the bot, it tells us the message text that was sent, what language it was in. If I click on the hello, how are you, this is what's being sent to our bot in the package, and you can see that it sent it to us in US English, plain, when it was sent. I can add other fields in here to track the conversation. So there's a property bag that I can put things in to track things between conversations. I'm not doing that here. It also tells me what the client was and what its capabilities are. So for example, in this case, the client was the emulator. The client could have been a web page or Slack or Skype or whatever, and they all have different capabilities that can do different things. And we make those available to our bot. Make sense? Okay. So we're going to stop that and do something more interesting. Now, one of the things I'm going to do quickly, and hopefully, yes.
So you came back and it looked like it read one of the properties from the activity that was sent in.
Right.
Activity.text, but I see on line 24 you kind of have a connector client. Is that when you're calling the cloud, the actual Microsoft services, or is this all happening locally?
This is the connector that allows me, it's basically the thing that connects to the client simulator. So that connector I need to create the channel that I communicate back to the originating client. So in this case, the connector has a conversation. It tracks the context of the conversation. If we were to look at the debug code in here, you'll see that it has a conversation ID. And basically, it allows me to reply to that particular activity. This allows me to manage multiple conversations at the same time. Okay? Because our bot's only running in a single context, but we could be having a lot of people talking to it. So it has different conversation IDs to manage all that. Okay? Okay, so Now, let's see how good I am at copy and paste, because you don't want to watch me type all this stuff. So basically, we have a very simple bot that doesn't do very much. What we want to do is we want to enhance it to send the question to Lewis, have Lewis determine the intent and the subject of that intent, and send that back to us. So this is where we do the magic, if I did it right. In my case, I've actually got some cheater code here. So the first thing is I'm going to create a Lewis response class. Add class. When Lewis sends us a response, it is always as JSON. And this basically, all I did is I took the JSON from Lewis, which if you go to Lewis, it'll give you the JSON that's going to reply. And I took that, pumped it through, was it JSON to C#, or there's a little web page that does it and generates the class for you. It's pretty simple. You get a response that will tell you what the original query was, the top scoring intent, and then it'll give you a list of all the intents and entities with their score. So it's possible that you may get the top scoring entity is only 20%. Well, in the Lewis or in the Ash accessibility hub, if it wasn't above a certain threshold, we came back and said, well, we think it might be this, but we're not sure. Can you let us know if this is right or not? So we try to be as friendly as possible there. And then you basically get the list of entities and the intent with its score. Simple. You can.
Is the sentiment analysis now part of Lewis, or is it separate?
It is not. It is separate. You would have to send that as a separate query.
Just wondering, it used to be, I thought maybe they merged it.
Okay. The spell check has been merged in, but not the sentiment analysis, unless it has and I don't know about it. It's possible. There's things being released all the time. The sentiment analysis, as far as I know, is not in there at this point. That would be a really vastly useful thing. I think it would be great if it had that. We can look later if you want. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to call Lewis. Oops. Come on. Trying to remember where to put it. Put it right here. Okay, so what we have here is we're going to leave all the other stuff intact, which was the echoing, the echo bot. Then we're going to create an HTTP client, because the calls to these cognitive services are just REST web calls. Simple enough. On the Lewis site, and we can go there quickly, under the Publish app, it gives you the endpoint URL that you can use to call and get a response back. So in this case, we give it the endpoint URL, we add the query in, so whatever the text was that we got, and then we basically get the string back and pump it into Lewis response, and then we do something with it. In our case, all we're going to do is echo back, this is what you want to do, this is what you want to do it to. So fairly straightforward, very simple, nothing fancy. Question? No? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just stop it here. Let's see if I did it right and all my links work. Okay, so I'm just going to clear that so we get a fresh start. How do I build a train? So inside here,